Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada.
ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की आई गौर प्रेमानंदे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम कैंटो 3 टेक्स्ट 25 चैप्टर 25 टेक्स्ट 18। ज्ञान वैराग्य युक्तेन भक्ति युक्तेन चात्मना परिपश्यत्योदासीनं प्रकृतिं च हतौजसम्। ज्ञान वैराग्य युक्तेन भक्ति युक्तेन चात्मना परिपश्यत्योदासीनं प्रकृतिं च हतौजसम्। ज्ञान वैराग्य युक्तेन भक्ति युक्तेन चात्मना परिपश्यत्योदासीनं प्रकृतिं च हतौजसम्। परिपश्यत्योदासीनं Anyone else? परिपश्यत्योदासीनं Vaishnavis. प्रकृतिं च हतौजसम्। भक्तियुक्तेन चात्मना परिपश्यत्योदासीनं प्रकृतिं च हतौजसम्। ज्ञान knowledge Vairagya, renunciation. Yuktena, equipped with. Cha, and. Sorry, Atmana, by the mind. Paripashyatya, one sees. Udasinam, indifferent. Prakritim, material existence. Cha, and. Hata ojasam, reduced in strength. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In that position of self-realization, by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service, one sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon him. As the contamination of the germs of a particular disease can influence a weaker person, similarly, the influence of material nature or illusory energy can act on the weaker or conditioned soul, but not on the liberated soul. Self-realization is the position of the liberated state. One understands his constitutional position by knowledge and vairagya, renunciation. Without knowledge, one cannot have realization. The realization that one is the infinitesimal part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit makes him unattached to material conditional life. That is the beginning of devotional service. Unless one is liberated from material contamination, one cannot engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, it is stated, Jnana Vairagya Yuktena. When one is in full knowledge of one's constitutional position and is in the renounced order of life, detached from material attraction, then by pure devotional service, Bhakti Yuktena, he can engage himself as a loving servant of the Lord. Paripashyatya means that he can see everything in its right perspective. Then the influence of material nature becomes almost nil. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhutah Prasannatma, Bhagavad Gita 1854. When one is self-realized, he becomes happy and free from the influence of material nature. And at that time, he is freed from lamentation and hankering. The Lord states that position as Mad Bhakti Labhate Param, 1854. The real state of beginning devotional service. Similarly, it is confirmed in the Narad Pancharatra that when the senses are purified, they can then be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. One who is attached to material contamination cannot be a devotee. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today, and I'll be writing quite a few things on this whiteboard. So those of you who are not able to see, you may want to shift here so that you will be able to see. Unless, of course, you don't want to see. That is fine. So I think even if you tilt it, can you see from there what is coming over there? So let's try to understand what this verse is stating. This is the teachings of Lord Kapila, that whole long section So, jnana vairagya yuktena bhakti yuktena chatmana. So basically, if we consider, this is the spiritual seeker. And a seeker, it says that has three resources: jnana, vairagya and bhakti. So with these resources, we'll discuss what these mean. Jnana, vairagya and bhakti. What if these three resources are used? The word was used was yuktena, equipped with. When one is equipped with these things, then paripashyatya, then there is, we could say, clear vision. There is, Prabhupada says, one sees things in the proper perspective. There is clear vision. When we have these three things, paripashyatya. And then when that will happen, then udasinam. So this will result in udasinam, detachment. It's interesting that in one sense, detachment is coming. Vairagya can also be said to be detachment. So you have to be equipped with detachment and then you will get detachment. What does this mean? But here something more it says, this detachment is prakritim cha hataujasam. This detachment is because of decreased desire, decreased infatuation. So this detachment, I'll describe, there's a difference between the prakritim cha hataujasam and vairagya that is talked before. So overall, this verse is describing the process by which one can grow spiritually. So just to address the question which was mentioned over here, detachment can broadly be used in two different senses. One is that we decrease our desires, and the other is our desires themselves decrease. Now, can any of you say what is the difference between these two meanings? The other is unnatural, forced. Okay. Second one is the outcome of bhakti. That is true. That is like the verse itself is saying that. But that is true in one sense, yeah. But you are on the right track. You just need to articulate a little bit more. Yes, please. Yeah, little loudly, please. Yes, exactly. Yes, thank you. Yes, exactly. So we could say this is effortful and this is effortless. So for example, some of us might have been eating meat earlier, and we start practicing bhakti, we start taking prasad, and then if we are traveling in a train or a plane and we see some neighboring person eating some meat, now it is not that we feel, most of us won't feel tempted, oh I want to eat that. No, we may not even like the smell of it. Prakritim cha hataujasam. So there is no attraction itself. But maybe if you are flying, going in an international flight, and maybe you used to watch a lot of movies before, and even now we have some attraction toward movies. So then we are sitting, maybe we are trying to chat, we are reading the book, and the next person sitting next to us, there is a movie going on. Maybe the movie with our favorite movie star. And then there is no prakritim chahatau over there. There is constant attraction. Maybe I should watch, maybe I should not watch, maybe I should watch. So we could say when we use the word natural, now the opposite of natural can be many things. One of the common ways is artificial. But that is not the only opposite of natural. The opposite of natural can also be intentional. That means I do this, yeah, I'm naturally not interested in it. Like I am intentionally choosing not to be interested in it. So the opposite of natural, so naturally, so the fruit, this is what we're talking about, is this detachment in one sense is natural. But this vairagya is intentional. That means a person is choosing not to focus on something even when the desires are there. So this verse states that if we want to come to that level where we have the clear vision of reality, and from that clear vision of reality there is natural or organic detachment that comes. So to get there we need these three things: jnana, vairagya and bhakti. So now these are common terms which you have all heard repeatedly in our philosophical study. Now I will use one particular metaphor to explain these three terms in a contemporary way, and then that will help us also to apply them in our lives, to see how we can ourselves become yuktena, equipped with these. So the Gita explains, we could say our existence is three level. There is the soul, then there is the mind. The mind you can say is the broadly the subtle body. Then there is the gross body. And then beyond that is the outer world. So normally whatever we are seeing, so stimuli are coming in from the outer world through the body, through the mind to the soul. So for example, right now you are looking at me or you are looking at the board. So what is happening is the stimuli from there are coming through your eyes and through your ears, shrotram chakshuhu. From both of them they are coming and they are being integrated on the screen of the mind. So we could say the mind is like a inner screen. It's there inside us, and on that inner screen outer perceptions come and get impressed over there. They impinge, they appear over there. Now of course what appears on the mind is not determined only by outer perceptions. The outer perceptions do play a role. But suppose a long class is going on and during a long talk our mind goes for a walk. And then if there is some humor, the mind comes running back. Hey, what was the joke? I also want to laugh. So essentially we could say that on this, if we consider the screen of the mind, what appears on this screen, so we could compare this to our say mobile phone screen, or we could compare it to our computer screen. Now what appears on this screen is determined by two things. One is we can have perceptions. Perceptions means that from the senses there is information coming in. It can come from there. But apart from that, it can also come from impressions. So impressions and perceptions, both of these combine together to produce the thoughts and the entire mental activity. From thoughts we can have desires, we can have emotions, all those things. So both of these combine, perceptions and impressions combine to produce the thoughts in our mind. So for example, if somebody has diabetes and they see some delicious jalebi, now the perception is coming in. Oh, this looks so nice, this looks so tasty. Now inside the mind there are two impressions. One is, hey, this is so tasty, I want to enjoy it, this is so enjoyable. If the another perception is, doctor is told, don't eat it, you'll get into a lot of trouble. Now, which impression is stronger? Depending on that, if the impression of what the doctor said is, doctor is said is stronger, forget the jalebi. If the impression of the taste of jalebi is stronger, forget the doctor. So, mattaha smrutir jnanam apohanam cha. So, Krishna gives us forgetfulness depending on what our desire is. What is it that we prioritize? What is it that we want the most? So these perceptions and impressions, they combine together. And all of us, say right now, all of you are hearing the same class. So the perception is the same. But say after the class, if we ask a few devotees who attended the class, what point did you like? Most devotees will say different points. Because based on the impressions that are there in our mind from the past, certain points strike for us. So perceptions come in, but which perceptions register the most? That depends on what kind of impressions are there in a person. So the impressions, another word for them is samskar. Now the word samskar refers generically to impressions. We all have different kinds of samskars from the past. Now it also refers specifically ceremonies for making good impressions. So for example, there is the Vivaha samskar. There are various samskars like that. These are specific ceremonies. The idea is these ceremonies are meant to create good impressions. So I spend almost 8-9 months of the year in the Western world trying to do some outreach there. So once a year we bring people from the West to India and we take them to various places. And so we had got a group of Western yoga students, most of them were young women. So they wanted to experience what they call the big Indian wedding. So there was one devotee congregation, devotee wedding was there in Mumbai, so they attended that. So at the end of the trip, we were asking different people, what was it that you liked? Some people will say we like Vrindavan, some people said we like the Kirtan, we like this, we like that. So one of the women, she said that I like the wedding. I said, and then I asked her, what did you like about the wedding? He says, now, one thing which if you go from India to America, you realize that the West is so lonely. You can go on a long street and from the start to the end of the street, if you're going for a walk, you don't see a single human being. And in India, you go on the street, you can't see a single spot where there's no human being. So that people are large. So even for a, you could say the average wedding, there are several hundred people come. In America, if 200, 300 people come for a wedding, that's a big thing. So this wedding, that is 600, 700 people were there. Not a very big wedding, but big wedding. So she said that after attending a wedding like that, you cannot forget that you are married. So, if yes, going to a court and signing with hardly anyone, just 1 or 2 witnesses, that doesn't create much samskar. So, sometimes ceremonies are helpful to create impressions. So, samskar can refer to both the impressions as well as the ceremonies that are designed to create the impressions. Now for us, say when we dance in kirtans, when we go for a Vrindavan Yatra with a large number of devotees, then these are also occasions that create impressions. When we have a grand festival with this beautiful Abhishek, there's a large amount of bhoga being offered to the Lord, there is resonant kirtans, there is an inspiring class, all these create impressions. So the point is, we all want to change and create positive impressions. Right. We all have impressions. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative. And everybody has some or the other negative impressions. So samskara means everybody has some scar. Some scar. Everybody is scarred in some way or the other. So we all have scars, because of which when we perceive certain things get triggered within us. So now now this trigger can be both in terms of desire or fear. Ichha and bhaya, raga and bhaya, these are the two primary emotions. The mind has many emotions. Hey, this is wonderful, this is dreadful, this is scary. These are two main emotions. Apart from that, there are other emotions that are associated. Both of these arise not just from the object that we pursue, but the object that we pursue combined with the impression that is there inside us. So both combine and trigger certain thoughts, certain desires. And now when we want to, say, grow spiritually, so at that time we need to deal with the samskars that are there from the past, especially the negative samskars. So with this introduction, basic introduction to psychology from a Vedantic yogic perspective, now let's look at Jnana, Vairagya and Bhakti. So at one level, if I understand that I am the soul and this is my inner screen. So the inner screen is the mind. So we could explain in terms of this metaphor. Say if I have a laptop in front of me and the laptop's monitor is there, the screen is there, and I am sitting in front of it. I am looking at the laptop. So similarly, the soul is there, and for the soul there is an inner screen. So jnana or knowledge in this context means that first is I am not the same as my inner screen. That what does this mean? That means, you could put the other word, that I am different from my mind. And what this means is the mind's desires are not necessarily my desires. So the inner screen is different from me. That means the mind's desires are not my desires. What this means is that if, say, I am working on the laptop and then suddenly something pops up over there. Your friend has updated their Facebook profile photo. Now that notification has come. Now just because that notification has come does not mean that I have to notice it. So understanding that I am different from my mind means that the mind's pop-ups, the mind's desires are not necessarily my desires. So this jnana, this understanding this difference between what pops up in the mind. Now that can pop up from external perceptions, that can pop up from internal impressions, whichever way it is. Now this does not mean that everything on the screen of the mind has to be neglected. Just like if we are working on a laptop and we get a notice that your battery is low. Well, that is not something to neglect, isn't it? So not every notification has to be neglected, but not every notification has to be noticed. So the point is, or not every notification has to be followed, we can say. So the point is, we understand that I am different from my laptop, and my intentions are not the same as the laptop's notifications. So similarly, whatever pops up in my mind, I am different from it. So I am different from it. Some of it may be relevant to me, some of it may not be relevant to me. So to the extent we have jnana yuktena, when we are equipped with knowledge, then we will understand that Just because a desire has come inside me does not mean I have to act on it. Just because an emotion has arisen within me, that does not mean I have to act on it. In general, if we consider, I am skipping the body over here, because the body is also part of the outer world. So, we have the mind. Now, when something from outside comes inside, so in the mind, what is generated is emotion. And then when we act on the emotion, what happens is desire. So bhavana and ichcha, they are two separate things. Emotion is what we feel on perceiving something outside. Desire is what we intend to do, what we want to do. So now for us, based on the perception coming from outside, we all will have certain emotions. And so for example, emotions say, that's nice. That's nice. Or you can say, take further, I like it. That is emotion. But desire is, I want it. There are many things which we like, but that doesn't mean we want them. Sometimes there is code language which also needs to be understood. If you are going to somebody's house for prasad, and if you say an item, that's nice, they think that means you want more of it. It did not be like that, but it happens like that. So the idea is emotion and desire. They are two separate things. And both of these arise in the mind. They arise from the perception and then from the impression within. So jnana means that if we have knowledge, we become, the result of jnana is that we become observers of our mind. We learn to antah sakshi. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 14th chapter that Udasinavadasinam gunairyo na vichalyate gunavartantityeva yovatishtati nengate. Krishna says in the 14th chapter that in 14:22-23 he talks about how specifically we can become an observer of our mind. So jnana enables us to become an observer of our mind. Now after observing, you can decide whether to neglect or whether to accept. That first become an observer. So this is jnana. What is the next thing we need to be yukta with? Vairagya. Now vairagya in this context means that, going back to the metaphor, just because something has taken space on my inner screen does not mean that it has to take all the space on the inner screen. Sometimes there are some very aggressive or intrusive programs. They give a notification and you look at it, there's no cross anywhere to remove the notification only. Some notification, they just don't go away. So if I consider this is my inner screen and say something that has popped up on the inner screen. Now when something pops up, it has taken space. It has taken some space over there. Now the nature of the mind is that, if you forget everything from this class, you just try to remember this one thing. Whatever catches our attention catches us. Whatever catches our attention catches us. What that means is that, say for example, now this particular perception, this particular stimulus, this particular notification has come up. Okay, so you are sitting here and right now you are hearing this class, and say a thought comes up in the mind. Hey, this is too hot. Okay, Now that particular thought has come up, it's too hot. Maybe it's true, yeah, it's hot. But then what do we do with it? If we dwell on it, oh, it's so hot, it's so hot, it's so hot. And then the more we dwell on it, that thought that this is too hot, this is too uncomfortable, this is too unbearable. From there, it will grow. And when it grows, that same thing will occupy almost the entire mind. So what was tiny here, what occupied a small part of the mind starts occupying the entire mind. So when this happens, then we feel, I have to do this. Okay, I have to get out of here right now. Forget the class, forget everything, forget what people think, forget about the Bhagavatam. I just have to get out of here. So similarly, for somebody, say somebody is an alcoholic or somebody is into alcohol a little bit, maybe not an alcoholic. In the West, there is a lot of emphasis on politically correct language. They say that nobody is an alcoholic. They say that a person has an alcohol use disorder. And now it's a big clunky word. Who's going to use that? But so the point is that that desire comes up within their mind. When, oh, I want to drink. Now they dwell on it, it grows, it grows, it grows. So sometimes when this happens, we don't even realize it is growing. I was in Harvard, I gave a talk over there, and after that they took me to their, I have some interest in AI, especially how AI is going to affect the society's ethical, as how is it going to affect society ethically. So they took me to the AI lab, and there they showed they're developing some technology now that normally, say, if you are watching one YouTube video, then there are a list of suggestions that come next. And then we are watching one video, we can be scrolling through the other suggestions, and if I find something interesting, we click on it. And then that video opens. But here they're saying we want to make things easy for people. But I don't know whether they're making things easy for people or they're making people lazy. So what is the technology that while you are looking at one YouTube video, so normally now the screen shows us what is there, screen basically is meant to display the video. But the screen can have special sensory material which notes where our eyes are focusing. So if I am watching one video, and we can decide the time limit. If I focus on another video for say 3 seconds, then even without my clicking, that video will open. So if I look at another video for 3 seconds, that will open. That will open. So now I thought this is just the formula for complete forgetfulness. Isn't it? So actually you don't even have to click a video. You're watching one and you get lost. Sometimes on Insta or something, people are looking at reels, one second reel, third reel, fourth reel, fifth reel. Somebody asks, what are you watching? Yeah, what am I watching? I have to think what I'm watching. Because I watch so many things, I don't even remember what I was watching. So it just becomes like a mechanical response. Just goes on, next. So now actually, whether such a technology is developed or not, that technology already exists in our mind. That means there are, if we consider, just to make this a little more complicated. So on our mind screen, there is not one stimulus. There are multiple stimuli. So for example, it's like you have a big monitor in which you have one window that is open big, but there are other windows also which are open small. So like that, there is one stimulus which is big. But apart from that, there are many other things which are small. Say for example, right now when you are sitting, you are hearing this class. If you are attentive, that is what is big. But at the same time, you are also aware what is the person sitting next to you doing. You know, how much is the temperature? Is the fan too much? Also, as background of your mind, you are aware, okay, how much time has gone? How long more is the class? What is there for prasad? So, there are so many other thoughts there. Now, the relative sizes of all these stimuli on the inner screen, they are not fixed. They keep changing. So, while we are focused on one thing, if another thought comes up and we start dwelling on it, it will grow. So, sometimes we think that just because a desire has come inside me, that is why I have to act on it. No, that is not required. So, Vairagya means, from this perspective, what it means is that something occupies some inner space, some part of our inner space, an inner screen you can say, and the screen, it occupied some space, but that does not mean it has to occupy all the inner space. From there, when it comes, this growth does not have to happen. Krishna talks about this in 5:23 in the Bhagavad Gita. Shaknoti haiva yah sodhum prak sharir vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayuktah sa sukhi naraha. He says that just because we have a body, there are certain desires, certain emotions that are going to come. Now, if a man sees an attractive woman, some attraction will come. If a woman sees an attractive man, some attraction may come. But just because that attraction has come doesn't mean one has to act on it. Krishna says these are kam shaknoti hai sodhum prak sharir vimokshanat. Sharir vimokshan. This just comes from the body. It is just a biological response of the body. So, we will notice. Just because we notice doesn't mean we have to act on it. Doesn't mean we have to become infatuated by it. Just as if we see some delicious food, maybe our mouth will start salivating. But just because our mouth has started salivating does not mean that we have to eat that food. So there is, just because something occupies inner space does not mean we have to let it take over the entire space. So jnana is understanding that I am different from my mind, let me observe the mind. Vairagya means that, okay, whatever has come on the inner screen does not have to dominate the inner screen. And that brings us to the last part. What is the last part? Bhakti, yes. Now, bhakti yuktena. Bhakti means that essentially we provide ourselves something better to watch. It's like, say, if I'm watching one YouTube video and that's quite interesting, and another suggestion comes up, you know, okay, it's a suggestion, keep it with yourself. I'm not interested. When can we say I'm not interested? Generally, when we have something more interesting to do. So bhakti is about giving ourselves more attractive stimuli on our inner screen. That's why one of the fundamental principles of bhakti is always remember Krishna. That means have Krishna on your inner screen constantly. It could be chanting the holy names, it could be hearing kirtans, it could be hearing some class, it could be remembering what we have heard in the class, it could be remembering the darshan of the Lord that we may have had. Just keep Krishna on your inner screen. And the more we do that, the more other stimuli will not be so appealing. If we don't have anything to watch, then what happens? If we don't have anything to watch, we will watch anything. It's not that we will stop watching. We'll watch anything. Now, so we need to give ourselves something meaningful, something attractive to watch. And that is what bhakti does. Bhakti provides us a lot of sensory stimuli. See, bhakti, in one sense, is sensory spirituality. Sensory means it uses the senses. With our senses we can behold the form of the Lord. With our senses we can come to a temple and appreciate the magnificent architecture. With our ears we can hear the music, we can hear the katha, we can engage the senses. So we focus more on trying to give ourselves as many attractive stimuli as possible. And when we make those stimuli ready for ourselves, readily available for ourselves, we will find that as we become absorbed in remembering Krishna, in serving Krishna, then prakritim chahatau jasam. And all the other stimuli, their allurement, their temptation, their power to tempt us will decrease. So initially Vairagya is required. Yeah, so I say we are deciding, maybe today there is some cricket match, some TV series, this, that. I can stay at home and watch that, or I can come to the temple and attend satsang. So there is some Vairagya required. No, I'm going to go to the temple. That is intentional. We use our power of intention to do that. But once we do that, we start realizing, hey, I'm learning so much over here. This is adding value to my life. This is making my life more meaningful. Actually, I'm finding deeper fulfillment in my life. As paripashyati, as we ourselves start perceiving the benefits, we start perceiving how our life is becoming more meaningful, more joyful, as we are becoming more and more realized, then naturally udasinam, we will become detached from other things. Then no, this is the higher taste. So I'll summarize this journey in one sentence, and then we can have some questions. So we often use this word higher taste. This is Prabhupada's rendition of 261 in the Bhagavad Gita, param drishtva nivartate. Now there is this higher taste. Now it is, I was in Australia, one devotee asked the question, we talk about the higher taste, but he says, to me the higher taste doesn't seem higher. And that is true. Often the higher taste, okay, either it doesn't seem higher or it seems too high up. Too high up for me to reach. But so what we initially need at the higher taste, we need intellectual conviction. We need to hear classes. We need to actually understand. Yes, there is a lot of pleasure in the world, but that pleasure is at the level of the body. That is fleeting. Adya antavantaha kaunteya. It will come, it will grow. It will glow and then it will grow. And then it will go. So it will not stay for very long. So we need intellectual conviction that there is a higher happiness, and that higher happiness is attainable for me if I practice bhakti. So this intellectual conviction, you can say, is jnana. So we need the intellectual conviction that that a higher taste exists, and that higher taste is accessible. So it exists, it is accessible for me. At some level, we may not have the taste where Rupa Goswami says that when I chant the holy names, I desire thousands of tongues and millions of ears. But some higher taste is there. I get some joy. So with this intellect, then there is practical discipline. Okay. Once I am convinced that there is a higher taste, then I discipline myself so that I focus on that higher taste and I turn away from the lower taste. That is Vairagya. The practical discipline. Yes. I could watch a movie or I could hear some class, hear some Bhagavatam. Okay, I'll choose to hear the Bhagavatam. That is the practical discipline. And to do that practical discipline, we need certain vairagya. Now, after this, what will happen is, you can say from here, we will get focus on the divine. Focus on specifically Krishna. This is bhakti. So, I choose to focus on Krishna. When I choose to focus on Krishna, what happens by that is, I start connecting with Krishna. I start realizing, hey, this is nice. And then, after the focus in Krishna, then finally, I'm running out of space here. Okay. So you can say there is absorption in Krishna. So absorption in Krishna, this bhakti is more of practice. This is the stage of prema. This is the stage of perfection in bhakti. So generally the difference between focus and absorption is, focus requires effort. Focus means concentration. Like suppose you go to a movie theater, you're watching a movie, you say, I have to concentrate on the movie. Hello, you don't have to concentrate on the movie. If you have to concentrate on the movie, that means the movie director has done a terrible job. Isn't it? The movie should be absorbing. It should just draw our attention. I have to concentrate maybe on a class, because maybe I don't have natural taste for it. I have to analyze, I have to understand. So first there is effort that is required. But by that effort, gradually it will become effortless. So the higher taste is first an intellectual conviction, then it's a practical discipline, then it is a focus on Krishna. And as we focus on Krishna, then that higher taste will become the reality for us. Then that higher taste we will experience it to be higher. We will experience, yeah, this is a much better way to live. This is a much richer happiness to have. This is what I will seek in my life. This is what I will relish. So that is the spiritual journey that the Bhagavatam takes us on. That is what Srila Prabhupada has equipped us through the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to go on this spiritual journey. So I'll summarize. I discussed 4 main points. You could say I started by talking about the inner world. So we talked about how there's the soul, there's the mind, there's the body, there's the outer world. And that in the mind, whatever arises is a combination of perception and impressions. So impression, samskara, can refer to specific impressions that are there. It also refers to ceremonies that create that samskaras. Then based on this understanding of the inner world, we discussed about what jnana means. Jnana means I understand that I and my mind, they are different. We create this, this distance and difference. We become an observer of our mind. That means my mind's desires are not my desires. I observe and then I decide. Just like on my phone screen, many notifications come which need to be noticed, which need to be neglected. That I decide. So we understand. The jnana means to understand the difference between us and our mind. Then after that, vairagya means that just because something has popped up on my inner screen, is occupying inner space, does not mean it has to occupy the entire space. So this is vairagya in the more intentional sense, not in the natural sense. So this is my inner screen. On this, something has popped up. Some unwanted stimuli has popped up. Some desire has come up. Some emotion has come up. But from here, if I dwell on it, then whatever catches our attention catches us. So now this journey does not have to happen. Just because something has taken space, okay, it will come, it will stay, it will go. Let me not get caught up in it. That was the third point. Then I discussed the fourth point I discussed was about bhakti. Bhakti means on our inner screen, we consciously create Krishna related stimuli. We give ourselves something better to watch. So, we make many Krishna stimuli available for us. And always remember, Krishna means as we have something better to watch than other things, we won't be so tempted to watch them. And we're not so tempted to watch them. Gradually, by this practice of bhakti, we discussed, we will get the higher taste. Higher taste, we'll start understanding that serving Krishna, remembering Krishna, that is far better than everything else. So this is where we can say that renunciation, that vairagya will move from intentional to natural. Prakritim cha hataujasam. So this is where we'll move from focus to absorption, from effortful to effortless. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So, are any questions popping up on anyone's inner screen? Yes. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Okay, where is the mic?
Here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving such wonderful reflections on our inner screen. One question, that in this whole process of inner screen and mind, where is the role of intellect in all this popping and emotions coming and desires going?
What is the role of the intelligence?
Intellect.
Intellect.
What role is the intellect playing in this whole inner space and inner screen?
When you use the word intellect, are you differentiating it from the intelligence or the same thing?
What we call buddhi in Hindi.
Okay. I was just fooling with your intelligence. Okay. So, basically, now I try to adopt a minimalist model. See, everything can be analyzed unlimitedly. If you want a map of India, you can talk about India and just draw the states. You can have a map of India where you can go inside each state and then you can show each state's capital, major cities, rivers, mountains and everything. So how much detail we want to zoom in, that depends on the context. If somebody is doing a PhD in geography, then they need to go into great detail. If somebody just wants to know the map of India because they want to visit India for the first time, they don't need to know about everything about India, isn't it? So basically, when I am analyzing the inner world, I stick to the minimalist model. Minimalist model means don't have too many elements. And this is also something which Srila Prabhupada has used. Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita in 15.7. Manah shashtani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. So the mind I use as a shorthand to refer to the subtle body. So now technically speaking, the subtle body includes, the subtle body has one component as mind. There are other things also. It's like in South America there's a country called Panama. Now inside Panama there is a city called Panama. Now are you referring to the city or the country? Like you have Delhi. Delhi is one part and you have Delhi is the union territory also. Like somebody in Delhi says, I'm going to Delhi. Okay, where are you going exactly? So it depends. So that means if you have the subtle body, in the subtle body, you can have the mind, you can have the intelligence, you can have the ego. Now this whole thing can be referred to as the subtle body, but for simplicity's sake, the whole thing can be referred to as the mind. The mind is the interface between the gross body and the soul. So now specifically within our subtle body is our rational faculty, the faculty to analyze. So we could say intelligence in today's analysis is primarily associated with jnana. That by knowledge I understand I am different from my mind. So that is intelligence. But now Srila Prabhupada and also the Bhagavad Gita differentiates subtly between jnana and buddhi. So jnana is more knowledge, isn't it? In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, okay, Krishna talks about knowledge in the three modes from 1820 to 22, and he talks about intelligence in the three modes from 1830 to 32. Now what is the difference over there? See, knowledge, the way the Gita analyzes is, jnana is more associated with perception, how we look at things, whereas buddhi is associated more with execution, how we act in the world. So jnana is how we look at things, buddhi is how we act. That's why we have the jnana indriyas and then we have the karma indriyas, the knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses. So buddhi is associated more with the working senses. Intelligence is more about, intelligence is the faculty which enables us to convert our intention to action. If I have a plan, if people make New Year resolutions, I won't do this or I will do this, that's the intention. But okay, if I decide that I'm going to read every day for half an hour, I read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam every day, that's a good intention. But then it is intelligence which actually translates that. Okay, if I have to read half an hour every day, what do I need to do? Do I have half an hour time? Or when I have the time, do I have the Bhagavatam with me? or where can I squeeze in the time? How can I keep track? How can I motivate myself? So all that translation of intention to action is done by buddhi. So buddhi is very important in our inner world, no doubt about it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. There itself behind one question is there.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, we hear that we are called conditioned souls in a state because we are affected by the modes of material nature. So when you talked about the impressions, are we talking about the modes of material nature? Are they the same thing? The first question is that.
Okay, so are the modes, the three gunas and the samskaras, the impressions within us, what is the relationship between them? I'll just give a basic answer because we could go into a lot more analysis in this. But basically, the word modes is used for multiple things. See, the modes are often associated with the stimuli. So for example, if you go to a library, that's in the mode of goodness. If you go to a supermarket, that's in the mode of passion. Somebody goes to a bar where there is no bar for drinking, then that's definitely the mode of ignorance. So that is the mode. So it's associated with external stimuli. Some are in goodness, some are in passion, some are in ignorance. So, but along with that, the modes are also associated. They're not just the outer stimuli, they are also like the inner gears. Gears means like if your car can move in the first gear, second gear, third gear, it moves in different ways. So when somebody is in Rajoguna, that means they will function in a particular way. Somebody is Rajoguna, just want to do things fast, get things done. Somebody is Sattva-guna, okay, let's think, let's plan. Somebody is Rajoguna, how long are you going to plan? Do something now. Somebody in Tamoguna, why are you fighting? Everything will happen on its own. Just don't bother about it. So they're also gears. They're also about how our mind functions. So you could say that the modes are associated with the outer stimuli. They're also associated with the samskaras inside. That means somebody in their mind, that their impressions that are there, they may be more rajasic. That's why we say that person is naturally in Rajoguna. He says, now all children, when they are newborn, all babies cry. But some babies, they cry in a way as if they are going to bring the whole house down, unless somebody immediately pays attention to them. So yes, it could be that for those babies from their previous life, their impressions are a little bit more in Rajoguna. That Ishwara Bhav is there. Everybody has to pay attention to me. I am the controller of this house. Like that. So everybody has different modes, different impressions, and the impressions may prominently incline a person towards certain modes. Does that answer your question?
Can we say is there a true statement then? It's like the impressions are created by the modes of naturally. Is the right statement? Because they are influenced, sanskaras are because of the outside world.
Are impressions created by the modes? Well, I'm not sure whether the modes create anything. It is our actions that create. Our actions influenced by the modes create things. See, the modes are like, if you say, if there's a big expressway, there are such roads in America, maybe there are now in India also changing. There is one lane where the highest speed you can go is, say, 80 miles an hour. And that is the speed at which everyone goes. There's another lane where everybody goes at maybe 100 miles an hour. If you go faster than that, you'll be pulled over. But if you go slower than that, also you'll be pulled over. You are slowing everyone down. There's another lane where everybody goes at 120 miles an hour. So generally say, so if you consider 3 lanes like that, the modes are like that. Now once you get into a particular lane, that's the speed at which you will move. But it is not that the lane is causing the movement. It is the drivers who are moving. So sometimes we say that the modes are the doer. But when we say the modes are the doer, what Krishna emphasizes is that we are not the sole doers. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuyah pashyatya akrita buddhitvan nasa pashyati durmatihi. Therefore one who thinks I am the sole doer, that person is not right. They are certainly we are all doers, at least in the sense that we choose which mode we want to act in. And once we get into that mode, that's how we will act. So in that sense, the modes are not creators, but the modes, you could say, each mode provides us a set of stimuli that creates particular impressions. And then we choose which mode we want to subject ourselves to.
Thank you, Prabhuji. The second is when you pictorially represent how the outside world stimuli comes to the mind, and that creates our emotions, and then we respond with a particular desire. So I was thinking there is something called Cheta Guru, Paramatma, and then there is soul who is also all knowable, like Satchidananda Swarup. So don't they have any role? Because you just bounce back the desire without going to the soul or the super soul. They don't have any influence over our desires, like what we desire or not desire, or they provide any kind of guidance to our desires.
Okay, so of course the soul has a major role, no doubt about it. When an emotion comes in to the mind, it is the soul who decides whether I want to pay attention to it or not. And when it pays attention, then it grows into a desire. Now the Chaitya Guru, the Paramatma, gives us guidance. That the 3 things this is: Mattaha, Smrutir, remembrance, knowledge, forgetfulness. Mattaha, Smrutir, Jnanam, Apohanam cha. Now all these 3 are in reciprocation to our desires. So depending on what we desire, accordingly we will be given the appropriate remembrance. Somebody is just an alcoholic, they just want to drink, and then maybe from inside the Paramatma says, no, don't drink so much. Or maybe some friend comes and says, don't drink so much. Says, no, I'm going to drink. And they drink, and next morning and they wake up and they have a terrible hangover. Then that was a terrible idea. And the friend comes and says, I told you, drinking so much was a terrible idea. Then they say, no, drinking was a great idea. Waking up was a terrible idea. So what happens is that they forget that this was caused by their actions. No, why wake up? Just keep sleeping. So people can justify anything that they want. So if their desire is to justify what they have done, the Paramatma will give them the jnana to justify. If they want to rectify what they have done, the Paramatma will give the jnana of how to rectify also. And based on that, once we have a particular desire, the particular set of knowledge comes, and then associated with that, we'll remember certain things, we'll forget certain things. So yes, definitely the Paramatma plays a role. And especially when we are practicing bhakti, I didn't have time to go into it all. In bhakti, it is not just we who are trying to get Krishna on our inner screen. Actually, Krishna is also trying to get himself on our inner screen. Isn't it? It is Krishna who also wants to give us his remembrance. When we strive to remember him, like I am putting Krishna on my inner screen, but then when Krishna sees that, we will find that Krishna will himself come on our inner screen. Gopal Champu differentiates between, Gopal Champu talks about two kinds of remembrances. One is Smriti and the other is Spurti. So Smriti is more conscientious. That means we are trying to put Krishna on our inner screen. We put Krishna on our inner screen. Whereas Smriti or Spurti rather is more spontaneous. It is. Prabhupada would also quote the words Swayam eva spuratyadaha Jevonmukhe seva. What is it? Atah Shri Krishna namadi na bhaved grahayam indriyai sevonmukhe hi jivhadau. When you start doing seva of Krishna, Swayam eva spuratyadaha. So what happens is Krishna puts himself on our inner screen. That means even without our effort, we start remembering Krishna. So that will also happen. When we show Krishna, we want to remember him, Krishna will also help us in doing that. That is also the role of Chaitanya Guru. Thank you.
Just on the appreciation note, I follow your videos on different lectures and everything. Those are very wonderful, and I thank you and Krishna for providing such wonderful guidance to every one of us here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Happy to be of service. Hare Krishna. So, yeah, where is the mic? Rupanuga Prabhu, till what time? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji, you said that the modes of material nature, they are not the controller. They just present us a set of choices. So when choosing out of all these choices, does this sanskaras play a role, or where does intelligence stand here? While choosing out of these set of choices that the modes present
when
to
the
us.
modes present as the choices, do the samskaras play a role? Yes, we will be naturally inclined towards certain choices. So somebody is an alcoholic, whenever they feel a little down, when they feel a little bored, then natural inclination will be to drink. So that is based on samskaras. Samskaras prompt us towards certain actions. But there is a difference between pushed and being forced. Being pushed is not the same as being forced. When we are pushed, we can resist. We can counter push. And that is why it is our responsibility to anticipate these pushes. Say for example, somebody is an alcoholic and they say, I want to give up alcohol. Okay, it's a good intention. But suppose somebody is an alcoholic and their house is right next to a bar. Or sometimes there is a bar inside their house only. See, this is for my guests. Yeah, there is a guest who will come. And that guest will be your own alcoholism. Isn't it? So, what you need to do is recognize that these pushes are going to come. And we need to protect ourselves from these pushes. We can't stop the pushes from coming. But when the pushes come, we create some boundaries, some barriers. That means if an alcoholic is really serious about giving up alcohol, then they have to maybe relocate. Don't have your house close to a bar. That doesn't mean they're going to stop drinking. Even then a push may come and they may drive a dozen miles to go and drink also. But at least during that time when they're driving, maybe the thought comes, hey, do I really need to drink? And the second thought will come, they will say, maybe I should not drink. So there are two things over here. When pushes, they come, one side is we need to create barriers. So we all need to find out what are the directions we get pushed towards and we create the appropriate barriers. If we tend to eat too much, then maybe don't keep too much tasty or fatty food readily accessible. If we tend to spend too much time on the internet, then maybe have some apps which regulate. If you go on the internet for more than this much time, then they shut off the app. So have something, need some aids. So we create barriers for ourselves. And the second thing is, we also create counter pushes. So counter pushes means that we create obligations for ourselves. We take responsibility. So instead of saying, oh, I won't watch so many videos on social media. Instead of that, okay, you can decide, I will read Shastra. And I make a resolution that, okay, in the next 3 months, I'm going to complete the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, that means every day I have to read for half an hour. And once you create that as a counter push, if you do it with some other friends also, we create a counter push, then the push becomes easier to resist. So yes, we will be pushed by the modes. So the role of the intelligence is to anticipate the pushes and to be ready for them by creating barriers and by creating counter pushes. It's like a flood may come. Now when the flood comes, at one level we need to have some kind of dam by which the water doesn't go overflow into crowded areas. But just the dam alone is not enough. If the water level keeps building, the dam will be swept away eventually. So you also need to create some channel by which the water can be led elsewhere. So like that, barriers and then counter pushes. We need to create both of those. So thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. You can talk after the class.